From the moment I was born, I've existed as a substitute for my little sister. Born for her, to die for her, to do anything she didn't want to do. Even marrying Prince N, whom she didn't like, on her behalf. But 2 years after the marriage, she regretted it and threatened that I must switch places with her. The reason I agreed to the marriage was to save my life. But now, I want to see who dares take my place as the Princess of Princeton. During the mid-autumn feast in the palace, I secretly observed the newly appointed top scholar for quite a while. TSK, he's really handsome. Among the lively banquet, he sat upright with a serious expression, looking almost like an immortal who had been exiled. Especially when the maid approached to pour wine with a gentle laugh, he blushed and waved his sleeve to avoid her touch. It was so cute. No wonder the most beautiful woman in the capital is so deeply infatuated with him. I couldn't help but curve the corners of my lips into a smile. My cheek was suddenly pinched. Who else could have done such an outrageous thing other than my jealous husband, Prince N? I quickly pushed his hand away. Father hasn't left yet. Don't make a scene. But he refused to let go. Could this scholar be more charming than me? Have you lost your mind? How could that be? He's nowhere near as charming as my husband. He continued to scowl. Nowhere near. I looked at him and softly smiled. He's not even close to being as charming as my husband's toes. Is that enough? He finally relaxed, peeling a grape and putting it in my mouth. Your sweet words. I'll make sure to show you some real affection tonight. Then he bit my ear, the whole night. My face turned bright red, and I lightly punched his arm. The princess sitting across from us suddenly laughed. The most beautiful woman in the capital is truly impressive. She's made the cold-hearted ninth prince become so warm and considerate. I don't think anyone else could do this. Hearing this, my body tensed up instinctively. I'm Song Xiaoyu. I'm definitely not the most beautiful woman in the capital. The most famous beauty in the capital is Prime Minister's legitimate daughter, Song Wanxin. As for me, Song Xiaoyu, though I'm also from the Prime Minister's household, I live in a lower position than the servants in the house. This all happened because I was born with the same face as Song Wanxin, offending this esteemed young lady. From the moment I was born, I existed as her substitute. Born for her, to die for her, to do anything she didn't want to do. Even marrying Prince N on her behalf, someone she didn't like. The reason for the substitution marriage was laughable. Prince N holds great power, often leading troops into battle, and Song Wanxin feared becoming a widow. Meanwhile, my cunning father, the Prime Minister, was so obsessed with spoiling Song Wanxin that he lost all reason. He knew that deceiving Prince N into marrying me would lead to a death sentence if the truth was exposed, but he still took the risk. And what about me? I, of course, reaped the benefits. Prince N is the Emperor's favorite, the Emperor's cherished jewel. Aside from not inheriting the throne, he gets whatever he wants. Not to mention, Prince N is tall, handsome, and the most beautiful man in the capital, admired by countless noble women. But he's only interested in Song Wanxin. He's been over 20 and hasn't taken any concubines or even a secondary wife. Although I lived in fear during the first few months of my marriage to him, terrified he'd discover my secret and have me executed, gradually, I stopped being afraid. Because he was so kind to me that I felt like even if the truth came out and he killed me, my life would have been worth it. And after I substituted for her, Song Wanxin fell for the Prime Minister's student, Su Yenshu, a pretty boy who listens to her and caters to her every whim, fulfilling her princess dreams. So now, my only hope is that Song Wanxin and Su Yenshu will live happily together for a lifetime. That way, I can live peacefully with Chu Qing until we grow old together. That's why, when I saw Su Yenshu finally becoming the top scholar after years of hard work, I was genuinely happy for him. But what the princess said next completely threw me into chaos. Father, you've been so busy watching Ninth Brother and Wanxin show their affection that you've probably forgotten about your daughter, haven't you? The princess was the daughter of the empress, bold and willful, never afraid to speak her mind. The emperor smiled and stroked his beard, following her gaze to Su Yenshu.
Haha, Yinyin is right.
Since today is a joyous occasion for mid-autumn, I will announce another happy matter. The emperor's attendant, Zhao Gonggong, immediately raised his voice. Top scholar Su Yenshu, receive the decree. I tensed up immediately. By the grace of heaven, the emperor declares, my beloved daughter, Chu Yin, is virtuous and kind-hearted, wise and filial. The newly appointed top scholar Su Yenshu is learned and of noble character, truly a match made in heaven for her. Therefore, I decree that Su Yenshu shall marry the princess as her consort. The wedding will be arranged soon. Thus, I decree. The hall was filled with congratulations, but I could only feel the world spinning around me. I noticed Su Yenshu didn't immediately accept the decree. He kneeled and said, I'm honored by His Majesty's favor, but I'm unworthy of the princess. I've already married in my hometown of Qingzhou. I cannot bear to bring sorrow to the princess. I beg your majesty to reconsider. The emperor didn't mind and waved his hand. Yin isn't petty. If she likes you, she won't mind your wife. In other words, I've married the princess to you, and all other women are now your concubines beneath her feet. I gasped. With Song Wanxin's pampered nature, how could she accept being a concubine? My wife and I have known each other for a long time, and she's shown me great kindness. I cannot do anything to hurt her. Please, your majesty. Before Su Yenshu could finish, the princess slammed the table. Good for you, Su Yenshu. Stop beating around the bush. Do you look down on me because I'm older and a widow? The princess was a few years older than Su Yenshu and had lost 2 consorts, something everyone knew. Su Yenshu quickly looked at the princess. I don't dare. I'm from humble origins, and your majesty's favor terrifies me. I could never disgrace the princess or the royal family. I beg your majesty and the princess to think this through. Don't give me that flowery nonsense. The princess laughed coldly. Now, accept the decree quickly. I won't argue with you for now, but if you keep refusing, I'll make you a widower tomorrow. Do you believe me? What a virtuous match. Su Yenshu looked dumbfounded. He opened his mouth but couldn't say a word. Zhao Gonggong seized the opportunity to shove the decree into his hands, and the emperor chuckled. All right, since you've accepted, I'll arrange for the wedding as soon as possible. I endured the headache and stayed through the rest of the banquet. On the way back to the manor, I tightly hugged Chu Qing, curled up in his arms, unwilling to let go. I was afraid that if I did, I would no longer be his princessin. 4. In these 2 years of marriage, the love and respect Chu Qing showed me made me, who had once been numb and resigned to my forced marriage, fall deeply in love with him. So I was very scared. I feared I would lose him. A night of entanglement. My initiative, which was unprecedented, drove Chu Qing nearly crazy. Afterwards, as he held me tightly and kissed me to his satisfaction, I whispered, Your Majesty loves the Duke so much. Could you say a few words on behalf of Su Yenshu tomorrow? If your Majesty agrees, the princess will no longer make things difficult for him. Why does Su Yenshu's fate concern you? Chu Qing lifted my face, pinched my nose, and asked, Have you really taken a liking to him? Aren't you afraid I'll be angry? I knew this request was absurd, but I wanted to make one last effort for myself. Do you truly love me? Of course. Then, if your Majesty insists on arranging a powerful first wife for you, forcing me into a subordinate role, what will you feel? And what will become of my life? Chu Qing fell silent. I leaned into his embrace. I'm only speaking from my heart, feeling a bit of sympathy. Besides, Su Yenshu, knowing how hard it is to go against the emperor's will, still didn't pander to the powerful. Instead, he dared to fight for his first wife, showing his upright character. If you help him now, when he achieves great things in the future, he will surely become your ally and arm. Chu Qing thought for a moment, then kissed me and smiled. You're really soft-hearted, always thinking about me. Fine, as you wish. I'll go see Father Emperor early tomorrow. The anxiety in my heart finally eased a little. The emperor had never refused any of Chu Qing's requests. I hoped this time would be the same. The next morning, I saw him off at the gate. He had already gotten on the carriage when he suddenly got down to check my forehead, then carefully tightened my outer robe. You were talking in your sleep the whole night, drenched in cold sweat. Every time the wind blows, you react like this. I've called the imperial physician to check on you. The autumn air is damp and heavy. You should be careful. Don't run around today. Stay here and wait for the physician, all right? If it were any other day, I would have smiled and agreed, thinking I had all the time in the world. But today, my eyes welled up. No one had ever treated me this well. Never. Chu Qing smiled as he wiped away my tears and gently brushed my nose. Little spoiled one, I'll be back as soon as I can. Okay, I'll wait for you. I obediently returned to my room, ready to wait for the imperial physician. But instead of the physician, people from the Prime Minister's household arrived. 5. At the Prime Minister's house, I met Song Wanxin, whom I hadn't seen in 2 years. She was still as arrogant as ever, sizing me up before sneering. Song Xiuyu, looks like your life as the princess of An has been pretty good these past 2 years. You seem to be thriving. But from now on, you're no longer the princess of An. Change back now. I don't want Su Yanshu anymore. My chest tightened with pain. Actually, Su Yanshu was fighting for you last night. Song Wanxin immediately became enraged and interrupted me. What's the point of fighting? Does he dare disobey the emperor's order? The banquet was attended by father too. Would he dare refuse to marry? Besides, I've never gotten along with the princess. The more he fights for me, the more she'll hate me. And after he returned home last night, he kept saying how he was forced into it, asking me to understand. Once that old hag marries into the family, what position will I have in this household? Will I even survive? I don't want to live like this. Men's vows are always lies. Father loved mother so much, but he still fathered a child with another woman. But I heard that in these 2 years, the Duke of An hasn't even taken a concubine. His heart and mind are all on me. If I had known Su Yanshu would be so heartless, I would never have refused to become the Duke's consort back then. I must have been blind to refuse him. This bastard. I didn't speak, just silently watched her with a pale face. After venting her anger, she ordered me. Song Xiuyu, change your clothes with me now. You've always been lowborn, so you're well suited to go to Su Yanshu and deal with the old hag. I want to go back to the Duke's side. Since he was a teenager, his heart and mind have always been on me, and it's widely known that I was the one he wanted to marry. As long as he doesn't take a concubine to disgust me, I'll even accept being a widow. Yes, Chu Qing had never loved me. That one sentence alone was enough to pierce my heart. I hoarsely asked, if the emperor revokes the decree and Su Yanshu doesn't have to marry the princess, what will you do? Song Wanxin arrogantly raised her chin, her beautiful almond eyes disdainfully glancing at me. Right now, I just want to be the Duke's consort again. I don't want any other men. When I didn't respond for a long time, she became angry. Song Xiuyu, you're asking for trouble. If you don't want to change, I'll have father sell your mother to the brothel, ruin your looks, and marry you off to the butcher brothers in Qingzhou. Those butcher brothers are about the same age as father, and because they're so ugly, they've remained single. They're willing to share a wife to pass on the Zhang family's bloodline. My face turned even paler. I believed that if I didn't cooperate, my Prime Minister father and my good sister would do exactly that. Song Wanxin paused for a moment, then grabbed my hand. Good sister, I really can't bear to see you and your mother end up like that. Don't worry, Su Yanshu will treat you well for my sake. He'll live comfortably for the rest of his life, and I've found you a good future. I'll also take care of your mother, so you can rest assured. Just don't be foolish. Her incessant talking made my head ache, and I dug my nails into my palms. I'll change, but I won't go to Su Yanshu's. I want to go back to the Duke's mansion with you first. Song Wanxin's eyes widened.
What do you mean by that? 6.
By the time Song Wanxin and I returned to the Prince N's residence, it was already evening. However, the carriage that used to be exclusively mine now carried Song Wanxin. As for me, I dressed as a lowly attendant, running behind the carriage all the way. I would rather die than become a concubine to Su Yanshu, but I couldn't even escape. My mother's life was in their hands. I had no choice but to come up with a reason to buy some time. I said that since she was new to the Prince Anne's residence and unfamiliar with everything, it would be better if I stayed by her side to avoid any mistakes. After consulting with her father for an hour, she finally agreed to my suggestion. Once we entered the residence, I saw Chu Qing waiting for us from a distance. He gently raised his hand and carefully helped Song Wanxin out of the carriage, smiling softly. I kept you waiting, yet you ran back to the Prime Minister's residence, not even caring for your own health. You, ex-Einer, what should I do with you? Song Wanxin gazed at him with misty eyes. I want to see my stepmother. She treated me so well when I was young, and after my mother passed away, she became just as important to me as my own mother. Chu Qing paused for a moment, then gently patted her back, offering comfort. Don't worry, I've already sent for the royal physician. As he spoke, he held Song Wanxin as they walked inside. The matter of the marriage decree. I haven't had a chance to discuss it with Father Emperor yet, but your father-in-law stopped me. I didn't want to upset him, so I came back to inform you first. I froze at the sound of his voice and stumbled slightly. Song Wanxin's soft voice followed. My father has already reprimanded me. I've been too presumptuous, relying on your affection and causing trouble. I thought it was just a joke for the emperor to withdraw the decree, but after being scolded, I realized how reckless I've been. Su Yenshu and my elder sister have their own fate, and we, as outsiders, shouldn't meddle. Chu Qing looked at her for a moment, a little stunned, then smiled. This is the first time you're calling her elder sister. Has your father-in-law scolded you into being polite? Song Wanxin's smile froze for a moment, then she lowered her head, looking shy. I knew you would tease me. I won't talk to you anymore. Chu Qing immediately smiled warmly and hugged her tighter. All right, then I won't bother with them anymore. It's better for me. My heart sank to the bottom. That was the matter I had placed all my hopes on. The two of them walked off hand in hand, intimately. My heart ached, but who could I blame? I only had myself to blame for being greedy for his kindness and falling deeply in love with him. How pathetic and ridiculous. It was only me from the start to the end. That night, I couldn't sleep at all. Somehow, I found myself in front of their room. The night was quiet, and the moonlight gently reflected off the window bars, casting the image of them in each other's arms. So beautiful, yet so blinding. 7. I bent down, pressing my hand tightly against my chest. It felt like someone had stabbed a hole right through my heart, the cold wind rushing through it. I knew that the one Chu Qing truly wanted was Song Wanxin, yet it still hurt so much. I didn't know how I made my way back to the firewood room. I wiped my face and found that it was covered in tears. The next morning, I was listlessly chopping wood when Song Wanxin suddenly grabbed my collar, speaking furiously. Fortunately, I listened to you and brought you back to the residence. I've really gotten into trouble now. Trouble? Could it be that Chu Qing had noticed the difference between her and me? I watched her quietly, though a bit excited in my heart. She shoved me hard. What kind of spell did you put on Prince Anne? Why doesn't he touch me? Those words felt like a warm, sweet spring, flowing through the parched pain in my heart. I smiled faintly. How should I know whether he touches you or not? Why don't you invite me to your room tonight, and I'll help you figure out why. You, Song Xiaoyu, you've gone too far. Song Wanxin was so angry she tried to hit me, but I easily pushed her away. This is the prince's residence. If you make more noise, I'll be happy to see it. She swallowed her anger, glaring at me, and lowered her voice. I'll wait a few more days to completely figure him out. After that, we'll see how I deal with you. She turned to leave, but I grabbed her arm and pulled her back. Here's a little reminder for you. He went to the northern regions for battle when he was younger, and it left him with a stomach condition. Now that the weather is cold, I remind him every day to wear an abdominal protector before he goes out. Don't forget, or you might reveal his weakness. I wasn't really being kind, but I was concerned about Chu Qing's health. Otherwise, I wouldn't have told her. Unexpectedly, Song Wanxin impatiently shook me off. That's the servant's job. After serving him for so many years, they should know his habits. I'm the princess consort. Do you think I'm like you, doing all those little chores? I stared at her without blinking. Even now, you still don't love him. You only care about the title of princess consort, right? You mind your own business. Song Wanxin couldn't answer. Suddenly, her eyes widened. Song Siyu, don't tell me you've fallen for Princeton?
8.
I paused for a moment. If she knew how I felt about Chu Qing, with her jealousy, she would probably think of countless wicked ways to torment me and my mother. I shook my head decisively. How could I be worthy of loving him? I'm just afraid that if you cause him to be suspicious, you'll have your father to protect you, but I'll end up losing my life. Song Wanxin scrutinized me for a long time, and seeing that I didn't seem to be lying, she immediately smiled triumphantly. At least you know your place. No matter what happens, I have my father behind me. In the end, the one the prince will punish will only be you. A lowly servant who deceived him for 2 years. Humph. He might not even leave you a whole corpse. Her words were like knives, each one cutting deep into my heart. Yes, a lowly and worthless creature is unworthy of a shining star. I lowered my head, clenching my fists tightly. She leaned closer to my ear and whispered, "Father told me yesterday that if you have any ulterior motives, I can kill you anytime under the pretext of punishing a servant, and forever eliminate the threat. And as for your mother, if you don't follow his arrangements, your mother will die even more miserably. Father is always decisive. Think carefully." My poor mother. While I've had 2 years of being loved, my mother has never had a day of peace. She gave birth to me and raised me. How could I bear to let her suffer and die? I need to think of a way. I bit my lip, and blood dripped down the corner of my mouth. Suddenly, a soft voice called out, "Exener, what are you doing here?" It was Chu Qing. Both Song Wanxin and I were startled. I hastily wiped the blood from my lips, and Song Wanxin, like a frightened rabbit, quickly rushed out, directly throwing herself into Chu Qing's arms. What a coincidence! One of the servants I brought yesterday caught a chill, and I came to check on him. Chu Qing smiled gently. Exener is so kind to everyone.
Ha, Song Wanxin.
She truly is clever, using me to her fullest advantage. I lowered my head to greet them. "Greetings, Your Highness." There was a brief silence. Chu Qing suddenly approached me. Song Wanxin immediately grabbed his arm. "This isn't a place for you. Let's go quickly." Chu Qing hesitated for a moment, then gently pushed her aside and raised his hand to lift my chin. I lowered my eyes tightly, too afraid to meet his gaze. I feared seeing disgust and disdain in his eyes. What's shaking? Is this prince really that terrifying? Chu Qing's cold and distant voice came from above, pressing down slowly. 9. I clenched my fist, trying to steady my trembling. I caught a chill, Your Highness. Please forgive me. Perhaps my voice sounded too harsh, for Chu Qing's large hand slowly loosened. Since she's a servant brought by the princess, let her rest and not work for now. Thank you, Your Highness. Chu Qing and Song Wanxin left together. Watching their backs, my heart felt as though it was pierced with countless sharp needles, aching terribly. I knew Chu Qing couldn't recognize me. With a pale, rough face, covered in pockmarks and with drooping eyelids, I was a far cry from the image of Song Wanxin. Ever since they discovered I looked exactly like Song Wanxin, they forced me to wear this ugly face, enduring mockery and humiliation from others. No one in the world knew about the existence of the concubine's daughter in the Prime Minister's residence. Only when they needed to use me would they allow me to regain my original face and impersonate Song Wanxin. When I was 7 years old, Song Wanxin went into the palace to play and broke the princess's most beloved kite. But the willful Song Wanxin not only refused to apologize, she pushed the princess, committing a serious offense, causing a huge uproar. In the end, my father, the Prime Minister, dragged Song Wanxin before the emperor and personally gave her 20 heavy blows. Each strike was fatal. The frail, young Song Wanxin was beaten so severely that her skin was torn and she was on the verge of death. That was the end of it. Huh. but he could never bear to beat his precious daughter. The one he beat to death was naturally me, but I survived. 2 years later, my father arranged for someone to shoot an arrow through Song Wanxin's chest during the spring outing, framing it as an attack by his political enemies. He wept in front of the emperor, successfully discrediting his rival. His goal was achieved perfectly, and his beloved daughter came out unscathed. It was almost me who faced the king of hell. There were countless such events. Before I was married into the prince's residence at the age of 15, they were common occurrences. I was like a dog they kept, ready to be dragged out and sent to die at any moment. Every time I narrowly escaped death, I truly wanted to die. I thought death might bring me peace. But alas, even the king of hell probably found me too insignificant and bothersome, refusing to accept me. Having no attachment to this world, it was only after marrying into the prince's residence that I developed a desperate desire to live a little longer. But now, Song Wanxin and her father wanted to push me back into the abyss. However, remembering all the past, I suddenly didn't want to accept my fate anymore.
10.
With a command from Princeton, I went to collect the medicine and lay down in my room to recover. I couldn't act hastily in opposing my ruthless prime minister father. The strategy had to be planned slowly, so I needed to first recover my health before anything else. But before I had even slept for half an hour, I was disturbed by Song Wanxin again. This time, she brought a large amount of high-quality medicine, especially a special remedy for soothing the throat, the small golden pill. Princeton insisted on taking me to the autumn hunt just now, but I can barely ride a horse, let alone shoot arrows. I'll definitely make a fool of myself. Song Wanxin furrowed her brows. Did you often ride horses and hunt before? I nodded. Although Chu Qing was favored by the emperor, he wasn't the soft, gentle type. He could ride horses and shoot arrows, and at the age of 17, he had already slaughtered enemies on the battlefield in the northern frontier, earning countless military merits. You must take the medicine, especially focus on healing your throat. I've found an excuse for my body's condition and postponed the autumn hunt for 3 days. By then, you'll go in my place. TSK, what a pity. If she went to the hunt today, she'd be exposed on the spot. How would Chu Qing think then? I paused for a moment. What happens after that? I knew well that the delicate Song Wanxin would never be willing to learn horse riding or archery. When Princess Chang in the capital was unrivaled among noble ladies in horsemanship and archery, Song Wanxin, always resentful of her, wanted to ruin Princess Chang's reputation but wouldn't endure the hardship herself. As a result, I became the tool once again. I would never forget when my prime minister father, fiercely telling me that if I couldn't defeat Princess Chang and make his precious daughter unhappy, he would slice me and my mother into 1,000 pieces. So, I was repeatedly thrown from wild horses, cruelly beaten, and forced to continue riding. With my body covered in blood and tears, I fought desperately with the horses, while Song Wanxin proudly went to provoke Princess Chang. In the end, I defeated Princess Chang. But the arrogant princess couldn't accept defeat and whipped me with her riding crop, one lash after another. I couldn't even defend myself. Beaten and bruised, I couldn't move and was dragged back to the prime minister's residence like a dead dog. Meanwhile, Song Wanxin proudly showed off her victory to her friends. Returning to the present, I stared intently at Song Wanxin's face. She smiled easily, seemingly unconcerned about the horse riding in the future. Don't worry, there won't be another time. After all, I can't let you stay in the prince's residence for too long. Long nights bring many dreams. After this, I'll immediately send you to Su Yenshu's side. Before leaving, she added, be obedient and don't have any ill thoughts. I heard your mother's madness has worsened recently, and it seems she's even started to self-harm. My knuckles cracked as I clenched my fists. Thinking about my mother, my eyes ached with unbearable pain. My mother is insane, driven mad by them. When she loses her sanity, she hits and curses me, blaming me for ruining her, wishing me dead. But when she's clear-headed, she holds me and cries, pitying me for my miserable fate, telling me not to hate her. For that rare moment of warmth, when she holds me. No matter how she treats me, I can't let her go. So, when I married into the prince's residence, the first thing I did was use my concern for my stepmother as an excuse to ensure my sick mother could take the imperial doctor's medicine. She had a proper house to live in, clean clothes to wear, and warm meals to eat. Though I wanted to bring her closer to me, she was only my stepmother, and it was improper in both emotion and reason. Moreover, with her madness, if she revealed anything, it would bring disaster. So, all I could do for her was this. Now, the nightmare had returned. They were starting to force us again. All right, we'll meet again in 3 days. 11. 3 days later. I had her covered, and the weather was especially clear and sunny. After Chu Qing finished his court duties, he went directly to the hunting grounds, while inside the prince's residence, Song Wanqin dismissed her attendants and had me quietly change into the prince's wife's attire. As noble as she was, she would never dress as an ugly servant like me. Her calculations were especially good. She had arranged to go to the autumn hunt with Chu Qing, but after that, she would secretly return to the prime minister's residence to hide. When we returned, while Chu Qing waited for me to freshen up and change clothes, she and I would naturally switch back unnoticed. I was now at an absolute disadvantage and could only follow their plans, taking one step at a time. When I arrived at the hunting grounds, Chu Qing had already been waiting for a while. The autumn wind was blowing, making his clothes flutter. He stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his expression cold and stern. As Princess Chong said, although he was incredibly handsome, his icy demeanor always sent a chill to the heart. But when he saw me, the coldness in his eyes immediately softened into a gentle smile. My throat tightened, and the gloom and pain that had weighed on my heart for days seemed to dissipate instantly. He quickly walked toward me, and I ran to him, tightly embracing him. Chu Qing lifted my face, his fingers gently wiping away the redness from the corner of my eyes, his gaze filled with concern. Have you been feeling unwell these days? You've seemed like a different person. I suppressed my emotions and smiled faintly. I've been having nightmares lately, so I haven't been sleeping well. That's probably why I feel off. As I spoke, I suddenly remembered something and quickly reached for his abdomen. Chu Qing's breath hitched, and the arms that held me tightened, his voice slightly hoarse, seemingly carrying some grievance. You haven't even bothered to check if I'm wearing my protective belt these days. Now, the cold wind wakes you up? How could you touch me so carelessly in front of so many people, disregarding all decorum? I felt the protective belt under his clothes and sighed in relief. Ignoring his teasing, I looked seriously into his eyes. Ah, Qing, your body belongs to you. If anything happens in the future, if I forget to remind you, you must take care of yourself properly. Treat it as if you're taking care of your own body for me. Promise me, all right? Chu Qing gazed at me. Then why did you forget? I meant could it be that you're tired of me, no longer thinking about me? Have you truly fallen for those delicate pretty boys who only know how to complain and act refined but would collapse with a single gust of wind? Chu Qing had never been one to speak much, yet now he was saying all these words, and the proud and arrogant man even seemed to be throwing shade at Su Yanshu, and with a hint of jealousy, I couldn't help but laugh. Silly. I pointed to my chest. Right here, you're the most important. Even when I die, it won't change. Though I was smiling, for some reason, tears started to fall. Chu Qing quietly watched me, patiently wiping away the tears that wouldn't stop flowing from my eyes. The wind is picking up. Let's go to the tent and avoid it, he said gently as he picked me up and carried me toward the tent.
12.
The autumn wind grew stronger, the sound of the wind cold and biting. The willow trees outside the tent danced in the embrace of the autumn wind. Chu Qing twirled a strand of my hair around his finger, his voice soft and laced with a slight smile. Exiner, I'm very happy. To be honest, these past few nights, I thought I might not make it. He paused, his gaze meeting mine. Normally, I'm always eager to be close to you, but these past few days, I haven't felt like getting near you at all. My mind's been a mess, and I even had a few ominous dreams. In one of them, You became a completely different person, arrogant and proud like the eldest princess, bossing people around in the palace. It shocked me. But I know you're not like that, and you won't turn into that kind of person. It's just me overthinking. Don't blame me, Exiner. The usually cold and imposing king and seemed almost like a child who had made a mistake. I softly grasped his large hand, smiling gently at him. There was a warm current that flowed slowly through my heart. So, which version of me do you like? I asked, my heart filled with both anxiety and hope. If he said he didn't like the version of me that felt out of place, I might dare to tell him the truth. 13. Foolish words. I like you no matter what you are. I love every part of you. Every single way you are. From the time you were a little girl, you caught my eye. I love every version of you, deep down in my bones. Chu Qing said as he placed my hand over his chest. Exiner, my mother passed away early. I've seen the evil in people's hearts, and I've tasted the coldness and warmth of human nature. My world was once dark and empty, and you are the only light in it. When I went to the northern battlefield, I swore to myself that if I survived, the first thing I'd do would be to go to the Prime Minister's residence and ask for your hand. I know we've hardly had many chances to communicate, and I don't appear like the kind of person who's easy to approach. You might not even like me, and it may just be my one-sided love. But I had already made up my mind. If you didn't agree, I'd rather ask my father to force the marriage than let you marry anyone else. Because I swore to never take a concubine, and I will love you with all my heart, and you will eventually come to love me. I'm confident in that. Fortunately, you were willing to marry me. You can't imagine how happy I was the day I married you. That was the happiest day of my life. Tears slowly gathered in my eyes. Suddenly, I found myself feeling absurd. Had I really become addicted to being someone else's shadow? Hearing the Real story was enough to move me to tears. I even thought of revealing the truth, to humiliate myself, even risking my life. Well, Song Wanxin won. The emotions that had deeply rooted themselves in him from a young age couldn't be swayed by others. It was just like how, even though he had felt something was wrong these past few days, he still made himself adjust to Song Wanxin's changes. Because no matter how she acted, he loved her. No wonder she could act so recklessly without fear, while I would always be her cautious, unseen shadow. I was incredibly relieved that I hadn't revealed the truth earlier. How much pain would he feel, having lost 2 years with the one he loved? I forced a smile. Will you accompany me for a ride, to enjoy the breeze? Aren't you tired? Maybe we should do it another day. I'm not tired. Today is the day. Song Wanxin said she would send me away soon. Even if, in the future, I found a way to deal with their father-daughter duo and save my mother, I feared I might never have the chance to meet Chu Qing again. I didn't want to lose this last chance to ride with him. Qing, forgive me for this petty deception of a lowly shadow. This is my last moment of selfishness before I fade away. All right. Chu Qing smiled and agreed, gently adjusting my clothes and hair. We walked hand in hand out of the tent, heading toward our horses. Perhaps because the sun was intense, my horse, resting under a tree, lazily lifted its head as I approached, slowly waking up. Would you like to change horses? Chu Qing asked. I gently stroked the horse's head. No need. I'm used to Feiyu. Feiyu was a gift Chu Qing had given me after our marriage. I named it Feiyu because it allowed someone as humble as Song Xiaoyu to soar through the wind, briefly forgetting my own insignificance. Over the 2 years, Feiyu had grown from a small colt into a magnificent steed. Now, I was about to say goodbye to it. Let it accompany me for the last time. Chu Qing and I rode side by side, facing the strong autumn wind, our gazes meeting, and we began to pick up speed. Suddenly, Feiyu let out a pained whinny, rearing up on its hind legs and stumbling crazily, spinning wildly before crashing down heavily. It all happened in an instant. I didn't have time to react before I was thrown off the horse. In the dizzying spin, I heard Chu Qing's roar. Exiner. Just as I thought I was going to hit the ground head first, a figure dashed toward me. Chu Qing's firm and warm embrace caught me just in time, cushioning my fall. The impact of our fall was tremendous. Chu Qing let out a muffled grunt and spat out a mouthful of blood. But his hands remained firmly positioned, one holding the back of my head, the other securing my waist, not moving an inch. 14. Prince N was severely injured, and the accompanying guards rushed to his aid. Meanwhile, I slowly walked towards Feiyu, who was lying on the ground, wailing in pain. Its right front hoof was twitching uncontrollably. But if it was only injured from the fall, it wouldn't make sense for the injury to be here. I ordered someone to inspect it carefully, and soon, the guards pulled out a sharp, long iron nail. Who has come near Feiyu today? These guards were all trusted confidants of Prince N, and I didn't believe that someone handpicked by him would cause any trouble. So, it must have been a servant from the palace. Replying to the princess, the only person who has been near Feiyu today was you, early this morning. Images of Song Wanxin's determined, confident smile from the past few days slowly surfaced in my mind. So that's it. I had always thought of her as just a spoiled young lady, selfish and willful, nothing more. But it turns out, she was just as malicious as her father. The small iron nail was embedded deep into the horse's hoof, causing a dull, slow pain that wouldn't cause an immediate reaction, making it hard to notice. But when the horse galloped, the sharpness of the nail would hurt terribly, and naturally, the horse couldn't endure it. She wanted to use me in a scheme, to gain Prince Chuqing's sympathy and later keep her distance from him in terms of horse riding. No matter how badly I fell, even if I died from the fall, she and her father could find a way to get rid of me, then claim the imperial doctor miraculously healed me. She wouldn't care about whether Chuqing would risk his life to save me, or if someone loyal to him would be mistakenly killed in the process. She cared for no one but herself. Don't worry, princess. I will definitely find out who did this. Whoever it is, they will not be spared. The leader of the guards swore an oath. He was also convinced that the culprit must have been one of his subordinates, as I myself would never want to harm myself. I waved my hand. Don't tell the prince about this. If he asks later, say Feiyu collapsed due to heatstroke. But, princess, do as I say, no need to say more. Yes, princess. When we got married, Chuqing had issued an order to everyone in the palace. He said that if anything happened to him, my word would be as good as his command. But in the 2 years we've been married, I had never used this privilege until today. This was to protect those who were loyal to him, so they wouldn't be mistakenly harmed. No matter where I am, whether in heaven or hell, I just want Chuqing to be safe and sound. I quickly walked towards the carriage escorting Chuqing, my mind full of the image of him spitting out blood. I sat beside him, tightly holding his hand, looking at his unconscious pale face, feeling a mix of emotions. He had given up his life for Song Wanxin, and it pained me deeply. I felt so sorry for him. The incident had been sudden, and naturally, we wouldn't attend the banquet at the Prime Minister's residence tonight. I didn't have time to think about getting back at Song Wanxin. I had to stay by his side to feel at ease. The news of Chuqing's injury had already been sent to both the palace and the Prime Minister's residence. This time, I was still the princess, and Song Wanxin had no way to openly appear in front of everyone. She could only pretend to be me, my ugly self, and came to the palace with her father, Song Yuan. I looked at the disdain they both had for me, and a small smile tugged at my lips. After all, the real show was about to begin. 15. After dismissing everyone, Song Wanxin irritably rubbed her ugly face and complained to her father, Song Yuan. Father, she must have done this on purpose. She purposely didn't come home to change clothes with me and made me come here looking like this. It's so embarrassing. You have to make her change with me right away. I can't stand this. Song Yuan looked at me with disgust and barked, Why haven't you gone yet? I obediently looked at him. I just received word from the palace that His Majesty will personally visit Prince N. He is already on his way and will be here soon. I will change clothes with my sister right away. Please rest assured, Father. Please go to the front gate to welcome the Emperor. My sister will come shortly after. Song Yuan snorted. Tonight at high hour, I will send you to Su Yan's place. If you try any tricks, I'll pull your mad mother's tongue out and send it to you, so she doesn't annoy me anymore. And don't ever think about the title of princessin again. Don't let Sheener be bothered by you. Bother me? Let him. There's still more bothering to come. I sneered inwardly, but kept a submissive appearance. I will obey father's arrangements. Please, father, have mercy on my mother, who has already lost her mind. Please don't hold it against her. I will be eternally grateful to you, and I will pray for you day and night. From now on, no matter life or death, I will never leave Su Yan. Please, father and sister, don't worry. At least you're being sensible, Song Yuan said, casting one last disgusted look at me before leaving. I returned the gesture, rolling my eyes at his back. He could wait outside. The emperor was busy receiving foreign envoys and wouldn't be able to arrive for at least 2 hours. I had already ordered everyone to say that the emperor would be arriving shortly and that no one needed to pay attention to him. It was a hot afternoon, so let him stand in the sun for a while and get his disinfection. Let him get rid of his dark, vile nature. Song Wanxin, who had been eagerly eyeing my title as princessin, immediately caught the eye roll I gave to Song Yuan and started jumping around, pointing at me. Well, you dare to disrespect father. I closed the door tightly, gave her a cold stare, and sneered. What? Do you have a problem? Probably, because Song Wanxin had never seen me like this. She was momentarily stunned, as if she had seen a ghost. I immediately slapped her hard across the face. The force was so strong it knocked her to the ground. Blood poured from her nose as she tightly covered her face, her expression changing from shock to rage. Song Suyu. You vile maid. You dare to hit me? You dare to hit me. Hitting you is for your own good. Let me teach you some manners today, I said, stepping on her hand and grinding it down, causing her to scream in pain. Does it hurt? You can't stand a little step on your hand? But when you were driving a nail into Feiyu's hoof, trying to make it fall, did you think about the consequences? I was bullying a horse. An animal. How dare you compare me to an animal? Because your behavior is just as beastly. Good for you, Song Suyu. So you're going to rebel. No wonder father said he would ruin your face and send you to Su Yan's place to prevent you from having bad intentions. I'm going to tell father. No need to ruin your face, just kill you right now. Song Wanxin, who had never suffered such humiliation, gritted her teeth and cried out, making threats. I laughed coldly. My good sister. Thank you for the tip-off. Song Wanxin suddenly had the look of someone who had just eaten something bitter. I was just scaring you. Father didn't say that. I made it up. I smiled and ignored her, then kicked her out of the room, sending her flying like a wooden post. Stop kicking.
Stop.
It hurts. It hurts so much. What a spoiled young lady, making all this noise. I turned around and grabbed a long cloth, tying it tightly around her mouth, then grabbed her collar and dragged her out. She had caused Chuqing to be so badly injured, and I, Song Suyu, would no longer endure her and spoil her.
16.
Just like they once dragged me, I had the proud and defenseless Song Wanxin dragged all the way from the corridor into the backyard. The guards stationed in the yard saluted me. What orders does the princess have? This little brat I brought from the minister's mansion really lacks manners. Let him practice stone lifting for half an hour, then stand on one leg for an hour. Feel free to discipline him if he resists or slacks off, but no permanent injuries allowed. Yes, I turned and walked away. Without needing to think, I knew Song Wanxin would be glaring at me with a venomous look. Sure enough, preposterous. How dare you disrespect the princess? I turned back to see a guard kick Song Wanxin, who had just gotten up, knocking her back down. She immediately became more obedient, her eyes losing their arrogance. Hearing her muffled cries of pain behind me, I didn't look back. Scenes of all the years they had abused me flashed through my mind, culminating in the image of Chuqing spitting out blood. My eyes instantly filled with tears. The hatred in my heart was stronger than ever before. My resolve and plan were firmer than ever. I quickly walked toward Chu Qing's room, and just as I arrived, I bumped into the leader of the guards, Zhuo, running out. Seeing the smile that couldn't be concealed on his face, the stone in my heart finally dropped. Princess, the prince has woken up, he's awake. I didn't bother responding and rushed into the room. Chu Qing was looking in the direction of the door, his brows furrowed. When our eyes met, he let out a soft sigh of relief, his expression slowly relaxing. I sat beside him, holding his hand tightly. He looked me over and softly told a few court doctors standing nearby, "Make sure to check the princess thoroughly. Make sure she's not hurt anywhere." "No need, I'm fine." I smiled through my tears. "Now that I see you're still thinking of me, I can rest easy." He frowned. "What do you mean?" I deliberately touched his forehead. "It means our noble prince and hasn't fallen silly after the fall." Chu Qing paused, opened his mouth, but only looked at me with endless fondness and smiled, not saying a word. The court doctors behind us couldn't hold back their laughter. No doubt it was the first time they had seen the icy prince and show such warmth. The doctors then reported Chu Qing's injuries in detail, leaving the room to wait outside. If a normal person had taken such a heavy fall, combined with my momentum, the result would have been catastrophic. Luckily, Chu Qing had martial arts skills and a strong constitution. Aside from a serious rib injury, the rest were just large abrasions on his back and legs. The concussion had caused his unconsciousness, and the blood spitting was due to a rupture in his respiratory tract from the impact. However, after a careful examination by the court doctors, there was no major problem. He just needed to rest to recover, get more sleep, and avoid infection in the wounds. I finally let out a long sigh of relief. In other words, if he hadn't saved me, with my frail body, I would have been seriously injured or even dead. I rubbed my hands together to warm them, gently massaging his brows with my thumb, sighing softly, "You must be in a lot of pain." Chu Qing gazed at me, teasing with a slight smile. "What is this? Don't think I'm like those handsome but useless pretty boys." "TSK, here we go again." I smiled and pinched his ear. The famous god of war, Princeton, actually has such a small mind. "You know I'm petty, so stop batting your big, watery eyes around trying to start trouble. How many men can stand that look from you? When have you ever seen me staring at women like that?" I placed my hand on my forehead and laughed. "I was wrong. I'm sorry. Husband, please forgive me. Otherwise, I'll ask father to exile Su Zhuangyuan to the frontier, so he won't stir up trouble." Chu Qing's face immediately darkened. "Do you really think exiling him will stop his thoughts? Huh, are you going to send all the pretty boys in the capital to the frontier as well, to herd sheep? In the end, you're just admitting you can't control yourself, aren't you?" Hiss. I shook my head and stood up. He immediately grabbed my arm. "Where are you going?" "To find the court doctor for some medicine to help you sleep and calm your nerves. I'm giving it to you right away." He looked at me, his dark eyes full of laughter, his voice suddenly low and gentle enough to drown me. "Would you be willing to?" His bone structure was extremely handsome, and his usual coldness only masked his beauty with a strong and sharp aura. But once he smiled, he became irresistibly charming. I couldn't help but sit back down next to him, gazing at the face that I couldn't forget. I teasingly lifted his chin. How could I ever look at anyone else with my husband, the world's most handsome man, beside me? Chu Qing immediately pushed me away with a look of disdain. A gentleman can be killed, but not humiliated. I rubbed my forehead against his, smiling gently. All right. My husband isn't just handsome, he's also mighty. Is that good enough?" He stared at me, his large hand suddenly softly caressing my face. "Sheener, do you know when I started liking you?" My heart skipped a beat. I didn't want to hear his story with that foolish woman, but I couldn't help myself. I asked, When was it?" 17. Just as Chu Qing was about to speak, the sound of hurried footsteps came from outside, followed by the announcement, "The emperor has arrived." Had he arrived in just over an hour? I quickly stood to greet him. Then, I saw Chu Qing tilt his head inward and remain completely still, his voice barely audible. I can't be bothered with his nagging. Hurry up and send him away. I couldn't help but laugh softly. I had always known how much the Emperor favored him, but I hadn't realized just how bold he could be because of it. If it were anyone else, they'd be facing death for such insolence. In fact, what I envied most was his ability to act like a spoiled child in front of his father. After all, I had never experienced the love of a father or mother. The Emperor rushed in, clearly anxious, when he saw Chu Qing still unconscious. A few imperial doctors entered with him, their faces anxious. They whispered, "Your Majesty, the prince has indeed just woken up, and there are no serious injuries to his vital areas." The Emperor looked displeased. Despite his anger, he lowered his voice to avoid disturbing Chu Qing. "His ribs are broken. And this isn't considered a serious injury? What do you want? To let Qing'er suffer more? Your Majesty, please calm down. The prince is young and strong. He will recover soon." Recover soon? Then why is he still unconscious? If something happens to Qing'er, none of you will get away with it. Your Majesty, please calm down. We will examine the prince immediately. If they examined him now, they'd reveal he was just pretending to sleep. I hurriedly spoke up. Your Majesty, Chu Qing is fine. He just had a brief chat earlier and got a little tired, so he fell asleep. Please don't worry, and don't disturb him, as rest is crucial for recovery. The doctors wiped their sweat and nodded quickly. What the princess says is absolutely right. The Emperor only grunted and didn't say more. He stood silently watching Chu Qing, his hand hovering as if he wanted to touch his forehead but hesitating, afraid of disturbing him. Eventually, he sighed and gently tucked the blankets around Chu Qing before softly leaving the room. Wan Xin, I have something to discuss with you. I hurriedly responded, Yes, Your Majesty. I followed the Emperor as he walked toward the garden. He remained silent, so I tried to break the silence by asking, Father, why isn't Father accompanying the Emperor today? He had gone early to the gates to greet you. The Emperor finally spoke. Zhou Xiao told me that Minister Song insisted on waiting for me at the gates despite knowing I would be delayed. But before he could even see me, he passed out from the heat. Uft. I may have planned it, but the result exceeded my expectations.
It was so satisfying.
I bit my lip hard to keep from laughing. I know why Minister Song did this. He was afraid I would scold him. After all, Qing'er got injured while saving you. But I'm not unreasonable. Qing'er was willing to risk his life to save you, showing how important you are to him. This is something he did willingly, so neither you nor your father should feel guilty. I was taken aback. I had expected his scolding, so his warm words were unexpectedly comforting. Just as I was about to express my thanks, he spoke again. These past 2 years, I have seen how loving and harmonious your marriage is. This has been my and his mother's greatest wish. For Qing'er to be happy brings us joy. However,
He sighed.
over the past 2 years, the imperial doctors who have treated you have been quite clear with me. They say that your body is in such a poor state that no matter what treatment is given, it will be impossible for you to conceive. I had a feeling I knew what he was about to say, and sure enough, Qing'er is my most beloved child, without question, and I cannot let him have no heirs. His mother, before passing away, repeatedly urged me to find a virtuous woman for him to marry, someone who would care for him and give him many children so that he could live a peaceful and happy life. I owe her a great debt, and I cannot let her last wish go unfulfilled. You're smart, so I'm sure you understand my meaning, right? In fact, I mentioned this to Qing'er half a year ago, suggesting he take a concubine. He was unwilling, so I didn't force it, focusing all my attention on the treatment you were receiving, hoping that if you could give Qing'er a child soon, he would surely be content to have only you, and I would not object. The Emperor looked at me sternly, his voice firm. But now, I cannot allow him to act so willfully. Tomorrow, I will have a list of potential concubines sent to you. I want you to choose 2 women who meet your approval, and they will be brought into the palace as soon as possible. No matter who you choose, I will not interfere. This is the greatest concession and privilege I can offer you as a couple. Before the new year, I want to see one of the new consorts pregnant, and I will even allow you to raise the children as you see fit. If you have any requests, feel free to ask, and I will do my best to fulfill them. But I hope you can persuade Chinger. 1 Xian, I have treated you well. Don't let me down. After the emperor left, I stood alone in the garden for a long time. The sunlight was so bright it blurred everything I looked at. Suddenly, I laughed. Song Xiaoyu, oh Song Xiaoyu, what did you do in your past life to deserve this? Why can't the heavens let you be happy?
18.
Chu Qing's injury made me despise Song Wanxin to the core. After an internal struggle, I decided that I would rather be a despicable person who deceives Chu Qing for a lifetime than let Song Wanxin return to his side. So, what if he likes Song Wanxin? But in these 2 years, haven't I brought him happiness? I am despicable, shameless, sinister, and I've taken over someone else's place. But as long as Chu Qing can be happy with me, I am willing to bear all these infamies. What does it matter? At worst, I'll go to hell after I die. I've already been through hell countless times in this world. What's there to fear? So I have already made a detailed plan.
But now,
I feel like crying without tears. I can't possibly, after slyly replacing his beloved, leave him without descendants, can I? He is so good, so good. It doesn't make sense for me to hurt him like this. I walked out of the garden in a daze. Back in the room, Chu Qing, who was supposed to be pretending to sleep, had actually fallen asleep. His long eyelashes were as thick as crow feathers, casting a shallow arc beneath his eyelids. His nose was straight, and his thin lips were like a painting. Just looking at him quietly, even if he didn't communicate with me, I would still be content to gaze at him for a lifetime. However, in the end, our fate still lacked that little bit. After dinner, Chu Qing woke up. The imperial doctors came again to examine him thoroughly, then gave him some soothing and pain-relieving medicine to ensure he could sleep soundly that night. I fed him the medicine, then intertwined my fingers with his as we talked for a while. Soon, he fell asleep with a smile on his face. I then went to the firewood room to see Song Wanxin. She was once again lifting heavy stones and stepping on wooden stakes. This wasn't something a delicate flower like her could handle. She must have endured quite a few beatings, and at that moment, she was lying there half dead. I patted her face, and when she saw it was me, she immediately glared at me, her eyes wide with fury. But since her mouth was bound, she could only protest weakly with muffled noises. I untied the binding, and as she was about to curse me, I quickly shoved a pill into her mouth, choking her throat to force her to swallow it. When I saw her trying to spit it out, I said faintly, "Don't worry, it's not poison. It's just to help you regain some strength, since I was afraid you wouldn't be able to eat properly."
spit.
I don't believe you have this kind of good intention. I'm telling you, Song. I immediately pinched her mouth shut and sneered. This isn't the Xie residence. No one's here to protect you. On my turf, if you disrespect me, the consequences, have you not had enough this afternoon? You. I tapped her face and placed my finger on my lips. Remember your place. Even if I don't punish you, if others hear you yelling at me, they won't let you off the hook. The taste of trouble and punishment isn't something pleasant. Song Wanxin swallowed her anger and simply stared at me, silent, her chest puffing up as if she were an ugly toad. I smiled and pointed to a towel and basin next to her, along with a set of clothes I had brought. Sister, I know you're the most beautiful woman in the capital. How could I bear to let you stay like this, looking so miserable? Clean yourself up, get back to looking fresh and beautiful, and when night falls, I'll send you home. Song Wanxin disdainfully rolled her eyes at me. I'm not going back. My father is going to send you away. I am still the wife of the King of An. I sighed. But now the King of An is gravely injured and unable to move. Whenever he felt unwell, I personally took care of him without asking anyone else. Now, I'll likely have to tend to him day and night, helping him with bathing and medication.
Can you handle that?
I'm only thinking of you, giving you a few more days. If you're willing to switch now, I have no objections. Song Wanxin furrowed her brows. She looked like she was deep in thought, which was actually rather foolish. In the end, she waved her hand and said, "Fine, I'll do as you say. I'll stay in the mansion for a few days. When he's better, we'll switch back." "Good, I'll listen to my younger sister. But you remember, this is absolutely the last time. From now on, no matter what happens, we cannot switch again, or we'll be exposed sooner or later. Your mother is locked up by your father. If you pull any tricks again, I'll make sure she doesn't survive." I remember. How dare I? And also, Song Wanxin's eyes flashed with fury. "What you did to me today will not be settled just like that. I can't move you now, but wait for it. Revenge is a dish best served cold." Perhaps she was used to bullying me. Even in this situation, she didn't see me as a person at all. I smiled. "Okay, calm down. When we get back to the mansion tonight, I'll tell your father all about it and let him get back at me." She pushed me away. "Humph, get out of here. I need to wash up and change clothes." I locked the firewood room, walking slowly under the moonlight back to my room. I sat next to Chu Qing, quietly watching him, until the hour of high, when people from the Prime Minister's residence came to take someone away. I covered the sleeping Song Wanxin with a veil, personally placing her into the carriage heading toward the scholar's residence. 19. I handed the coachman a large stack of silver notes. He was overjoyed and promised that he would not harm Song Wanxin in the slightest, guaranteeing that he would safely deliver her to the Zhuangyuan mansion. I couldn't let Song Wanxin be disfigured, because her face still had its uses for me. Late at night, I waited quietly. The show was about to begin. Sure enough, just after the hour of the ugly, the courtyard became noisy. Soon, I heard the anxious yet careful voice of the maid, Yu Shuang. "Princess, Princess, are you in your room?" I smirked and sighed deeply. "Song Xiaoyu, go ahead and take revenge for all the humiliations you've suffered over these years." Chu Qing was still asleep beside me. I had secretly increased the dosage of the medicine, afraid that tonight's commotion would disturb his rest. I got up and gently kissed his forehead. "I hope, Chu Qing, you won't be disappointed in me." I draped on my outer garment and quietly slipped out of the room. When Yu Shuang saw me, she hurriedly patted her chest in relief. She quickly pulled me to the side. Princess, something's wrong. The eldest princess barged into the palace with a woman tied up, and she's causing a ruckus in the front hall, demanding to see you. She said a lot of insulting things about you. The key is the woman she brought looks exactly like you." I pretended to be surprised, then quickly headed towards the front hall. Before I arrived, I could already hear the eldest princess's loud voice. "Zuoxiao, are you looking for death? How dare you block me? Get out of my way. Today, I must go to the 9th prince's room and wake him up. Let him see what kind of person the woman he dotes on, Song Wanxin, really is. Look closely, is this not your shameless princess? Song Wanxin, how daring. How dare she take advantage of the 9th prince's injury and sneak around with the man I have my eyes on, caught red-handed by me. Today, I will make the 9th prince see the true face of this shameless woman. At dawn, I will drag her to meet the emperor and have her executed." Her words abruptly stopped. The moment she saw me, she was completely stunned, and everyone's face showed an expression of astonishment. I acted as though I didn't notice, and gently spoke. "Please, eldest princess, consider that my husband needs peace and quiet to recover. Kindly remain calm." The eldest princess stared at me for a long time, then suddenly turned to look at Song Wanxin, who was kneeling on the ground, in a sorry state. You all," I sighed. "Family matters should not be aired in public, but in the end, it seems I've made a fool of myself in front of the eldest princess." As I spoke, I quickly walked over to Song Wanxin and kicked her hard. "Useless thing. Why did you not listen to my advice? Knowing that Su Yenshu already belongs to the eldest princess, why did you still provoke him?" Song Wanxin looked at me with eyes full of venom, as if she wanted to pierce me with a knife. "You, Song Xiuyu, how dare you plot against me?"
20.
I let out a cold laugh and waved my hand. "Zuoxiao, beat her. Beat her until she dares not speak arrogantly anymore." Understood, princess. Zhou Xiao stepped forward, grabbed the fallen Song Wanxin, and began to strike her mercilessly. At first, we could still hear Song Wanxin's curses, but gradually, she fell silent. I made a gesture for the still confused eldest princess to sit down. Please, eldest princess, take a seat and allow me to explain. This is my father's illegitimate daughter, my sister Song Siryu. Her mother happens to be my mother's half-sister, my aunt, and the two of them look very similar. Since we were born in the same year and month, our appearances are so alike that we could be twins. Originally, my father only loved my mother and didn't like my aunt. However, after a drunken mistake at a family banquet, he confused my aunt for my mother, which led to my aunt becoming pregnant. That's how she ended up married to my father. This caused a rift between my mother and father, and my mother became depressed, her health deteriorating, and my father directed all his anger at them. Especially when my father discovered that my older sister looked exactly like me, his hatred and anger grew uncontrollably, forcing my sister to dress as a man and live as a servant. So, no one knew I had an older sister. After my mother passed away, my father, stricken with grief, doted on me even more, and at the same time, his hatred for my sister and aunt grew stronger. But I always felt we were sisters, so I privately took good care of them for many years. Su Yanshu, my father's student, came from a poor background and had much in common with my sister. After I discovered their secret relationship, my sister asked me to keep it from my father and help her escape. She secretly ran away with Su Yanshu to his hometown in Qingzhou. I paused, sipping tea and taking a breath. Even though I spoke with Song Wanxin's tone, my heart hurt deeply. Originally, my mother was the innocent one. It was Song Yuan who had defiled my mother's chastity first, yet he resented my mother for ruining his marriage, torturing her until she went mad, and repeatedly trying to have me killed. Is there anyone in the world so shameless? I struggled to control my rage. On the floor, Song Wanxin continued muttering insults. She's lying. She's full of nonsense. Wu I am my father's beloved daughter. She is the lowly Song Siryu. Everyone frowned when they heard her vulgar words. I smiled and shrugged. See? As always, because she resents my father's favoritism, she holds a grudge against me. No matter how good I've been to her, she's never grateful and always dreams of swapping places with me. I even warned her repeatedly when I learned that the emperor had arranged a marriage between the eldest princess and Su Yanshu. I told her to stay away from the capital and not cause trouble, and to wait for Su Yanshu and the eldest princess to settle things before deciding her fate. But she still secretly returned to the capital, boldly meeting with Su Yanshu. I sighed. At this point, I can do nothing more. I have already done all I can. I leave it to the eldest princess to deal with. Finally, the eldest princess's mind seemed to return to normal, and she suddenly smiled at me. Song Wanxin, do you know I've always disliked you? Why should you be more beautiful than me, more skilled in horsemanship, archery, and poetry, and have the exclusive favor of the 9th prince and the emperor's recognition, while everything goes smoothly for you? Do you know how happy I was when I caught you and Su Yanshu together tonight? Haha, I thought I would finally have the chance to get rid of you. Even if the 9th prince won't kill you, you'll still have the reputation of a slut, scorned for the rest of your life. But unfortunately, the eldest princess's face changed, and she gritted her teeth, kicking Song Wanxin. Unfortunately, another identical sister showed up to irritate me. She looked down at Song Wanxin, coldly sneering. Fine, Song Wanxin, if you irritate me, I can't punish you? Fine. I'll take my anger out on this lowly sister. Song Wanxin trembled with fear, her words incoherent. You. Don't listen to her. I have no feud with you. All those humiliating things were done by her, not me. I can't even ride a horse. I can't even hold a bow. How could I let you lose to me? If there's any injustice, it has a master. Don't be deceived by her. The crowd sneered, and I helplessly smiled at the eldest princess. My sister speaks the truth. It was indeed I who offended the eldest princess. Regarding those past competitions with the eldest princess, I hope you'll overlook them. It was my youthful arrogance and ignorance. It won't happen again. After speaking, I formally bowed. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, the eldest princess could only wave her hand. All right, it's all old news. Her tone turned sharp as she pointed at Song Wanxin. But you, I won't let you off lightly. Do you know the crime of associating with the Grand Protector? Haha, I'm going to peel your skin off and make you regret it. Song Wanxin, both angry and scared, cried so hard she was almost breathless. Woo no. Father, save me. Suddenly someone shouted. The Prime Minister is here. 21. Song Yuan walked in with a tired expression. After the princess caught her, she took Song Wanxin to the Wang residence and also sent someone to the Prime Minister's residence to ask for help. I looked at Song Yuan and immediately rushed to meet him, tears in my eyes. I mimicked Song Wanxin's tone and said, Father, you must make decisions for Xi. Song Xiaoyu is being disobedient. When she arrived at the top scholar's residence, she angered the princess. Now, she's biting back and insulting Xin'er in every way. Boo-hoo. Father, I've been waiting for you. Why are you only now here? Song Yuan immediately felt distressed and held me up. Xin'er, don't panic. Father is here. Upon hearing this, Song Wanxin almost exploded in anger. Father, don't be deceived by that vile woman. I am Xin'er, I am. Song Yuan was startled. He furrowed his brows and turned to look at me. I slightly turned my body, and in an angle unseen by the others, I gave Song Yuan a fierce eye roll while speaking with grievance. Father, listen to this. My sister hasn't learned anything except to fantasize about switching places with me. If father doesn't make decisions for Xin'er, I'll go to the emperor and ask Ah Qing to help me. As the legitimate daughter of the prime minister, the emperor's ninth daughter-in-law, and the princess of N, how could it be a lie? The princess, standing aside with her arms crossed, sneered. Oh, this is quite a big deal. Imagining a noble identity is one thing, but openly spreading rumors that my ninth sister-in-law is fake, that could bring calamity to the entire family. Prime Minister, you're really lucky to have such an unreliable daughter. By now, Song Yuan understood everything, his expression looking as if he had swallowed a dead fly. He gritted his teeth and nodded. The princess speaks the truth. It's my lack of discipline. He then forced a fake smile at me. Don't worry, it can't be faked. Father won't let her keep talking nonsense. He said this and put on a fierce expression, stepping forward to pull Song Wanxin by the arm. Unfilial daughter, come with me. Wait. Both I and the princess spoke at the same time. The princess turned to me with a sly smile. You speak first. I thanked her and said, Father, you cannot take my sister away. She has committed a great mistake. Her entanglements with the Grand Prince have humiliated the princess. It must be handled by the princess. Otherwise, father is not showing enough respect to the princess. Song Yuan was at a loss, gritting his teeth. It's my oversight. The princess snorted lightly. Then, Prime Minister, you may leave. It has nothing to do with you. After all, you also despise this illegitimate daughter. Why bother with her life? Song Yuan wiped the cold sweat from his forehead, nodding and bowing. The princess is right. Then I will take my leave. As Song Wanxin watched her savior's retreating figure, she suddenly burst into tears. Don't leave, father.
Don't leave me.
Seeing Song Yuan stop in his tracks, I immediately ordered Left Xiao in a harsh tone, making sure Song Yuan could hear it clearly. Stuff her mouth. Keep beating her until she's obedient. Yes, princess. The sound of slaps echoed. Song Yuan's once proud figure was no longer present as he left the Wang residence, his steps slow and heavy. Little did he know, when he returned home, he would receive a letter of warning from me. If you want your precious daughter, you'll have to trade her for my mother. If you dare lay a finger on my mother, I'll cut off one of Song Wanxin's hands. With the farce over, I felt a great sense of relief. The resentment I had been holding for years was finally released tonight. I dismissed the crowd and nodded at the princess. If the princess trusts me, please allow me to temporarily hold on to my sister. Whether she's taken to the princess residence or the top scholar's residence, with the princess wedding approaching, rumors will easily arise. After the wedding, I will hand her over to the princess, who can deal with her as you see fit. The princess folded her arms and looked at me with a smile for a long while, then suddenly leaned toward my ear and whispered, "Sister-in-law, you've really set up a good show." 22. That's right. I secretly sent a letter to the princess, asking her to come to the top scholar's residence at midnight to catch them in the act. After Chu Qing was injured and unconscious, in my fury, I set up this trap. I didn't expect the princess to be more composed and shrewd than I had imagined, but I'm not afraid. No matter how much she suspects, in a few days, no one will be able to see me. What is there to fear? The princess jokes. I've been taking care of my husband, exhausted to death. My peaceful sleep was disrupted, and my sister's actions have drained me emotionally. Could I still be misunderstood? The princess laughed aloud. Song Wenxin, you're something. Although I don't know exactly what your sister did to offend you, I hate such pretentious, hypocritical women. Haha, I like your fierce spirit. She laughed as she walked out, waving her hand at me without turning around. Past grievances, wiped clean. I sighed in relief and smiled, replying, "Thank you, elder sister." She was quite surprised and turned back. Haha, this elder sister I accept. When I returned to my room, Chu Qing was still deeply asleep. I quietly lay down beside him, resting my head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. I knew that this warmth would soon no longer belong to me. Let me indulge in it for a few more days. I had someone lock Song Wenxin in the dungeon, reminding everyone that this matter concerns the princess' dignity and no one was allowed to leak a word. The prince was still recovering, and in order to avoid disturbing him, I kept it a secret from him for now. When he recovers, I will personally tell him. Everyone in the Wang residence was carefully selected by the emperor and Chu Qing, all reliable, so when I gave my orders, no one opposed them. The next day, Song Yuan came to negotiate with me. After seeing his beloved daughter suffering, he was eager to tear me apart, but since I was aligned with the princess, even if he ground his teeth, he couldn't do anything to me. I hated him so much that killing him would not be enough. But since he still held power, I didn't have the ability to act on it yet. Torturing Song Wenxin, however, was enough to take his life. So I couldn't be bothered to waste more words with him. Just seeing him made me disgusted. Song Yuan had been completely cornered by me, so he had no choice but to obediently follow my orders and bring my mother to the Wang residence. That same day, I paid a large sum to have someone escort my mother out of the capital and settle her properly. For 7 whole days, I was with Chu Qing almost every moment, taking care of him and showering him with tenderness. At the same time, I also arranged for the imperial physician to treat Song Wenxin's health in the dungeon. In those 7 days, the heavily injured Chu Qing had already recovered a lot. Meanwhile, Song Wenxin, who had only suffered some minor injuries, had long since recovered to her usual state. So, the time to part ways was finally coming. 23. That night, the autumn wind blew in all directions. The crescent moon hung coldly in the sky. The faint, shallow light illuminated the road leading to the dungeon. I walked slowly, very slowly. The moments spent with Chu Qing over the past 2 years flickered in my mind, enough for me to cherish for the rest of my life. I forced Song Wenxin to change into proper clothes. She looked at me with uncertainty. What trick are you trying to play again? I'm not going anywhere. I'll wait for my father to save me. I don't want to be beaten. I smiled. How fitting for a foolish person to be in this situation. She angrily cursed. You're the fool. Just do your job as the princess of N. I pushed her slightly. I hope you survive the ordeal, but that doesn't guarantee you'll have any luck.
Pa.
Song Xiuyu. May you die a terrible death. I was already walking away, but I wasn't angry. After all, it wasn't certain who would die in the end. I had chosen the foremost arrogant and domineering noble girls in the entire capital to be Chu Qing's concubines. I had to thank the emperor for granting me such great privileges, and for partnering with me to keep it from Chu Qing. Tomorrow was the day those girls would enter the palace. With Song Wanxin's foolishness, she would be played to death by those four. Ha ha! Imagining Song Wanxin, so ignorant of her own stupidity, being tortured and humiliated by them made me almost laugh out of breath. But as I laughed, tears began to fall. So many tears, they wouldn't stop. 24. The sky was faintly bright and light rain fell. I had been traveling for days and nights, leaving the capital far behind. With just a few more miles, I would reach the village where my mother was. In the days ahead, I would live with my mother, care for her, and treat her illness. It would be a good life. No more scheming and infighting, no more being humiliated at will. Because I was so rich. I had brought a large sum of silver notes with me, enough to last me several lifetimes without worry. First, I would buy a village official to secure power. Then I would buy a large plot of land and build a beautiful house. Next, I would hire the best doctors to treat my mother's illness. After that, if I found a well-behaved and capable young man, I could buy a few more and have them help with the household chores. That way, my mother and I could spend every day drinking tea, admiring flowers, and eating melon seeds. I stopped my horse and glanced back at the capital. Goodbye, my dearest. If there's a next life, I hope to meet you again. I turned back to continue my journey when suddenly, I heard the sound of hooves approaching. Could it be bandits? I had a mountain of silver notes hidden on me and hadn't had time to deposit them yet. Panicking, I urged my horse into a gallop. I was extremely fortunate that my horsemanship had been refined under Chu Qing's careful training over the past 2 years, making it exceptional. Yet, I still underestimated the situation. A cloud of dust suddenly engulfed me. I instinctively turned my head and held my breath, seeing a dark figure on horseback flash past me and stop a few meters ahead, blocking my path. I glanced at the figure, and my heart almost stopped. It was Chu Qing, wearing rough linen clothes. I stumbled to a stop in front of him. He looked at me coldly, unsheathing his sword and pointing it directly at my chest. You stole my things and thought you could run away? Who gave you the courage? I instinctively covered the silver notes on me. They were my lifeline. I'm sorry. Sorry. He dismounted, grabbing me off the horse with a fierce expression. You stole my things and drugged me to knock me out, thinking I'd die in my sleep? You plot to harm me and take my wealth, and a simple apology will do, he said as he roughly pressed me to his chest, holding me tightly. My face reddened, and I lowered my gaze. Then, I'll return half of the silver to you. You keep the other half, how about that? He took a deep breath, then forcefully pressed my hand against his heart. You stole my heart, so you'll pay with the rest of your life. I paused, then looked up with a bitter smile. Aching? I'm sorry. I gathered my courage and choked out the words. I lied to you. I'm not the Song Wanxin you like. I am Song Xiaoyu. I turned my head, unable to look at the contempt and anger in his eyes. But unexpectedly, he cupped my face with his hands, resting his forehead against mine with a sigh. What should I do? From beginning to end, I've only loved Song Xiaoyu. I widened my eyes, and tears instantly poured out. But I can't have children. I can't harm you. In an instant, he lowered his head and kissed me, cutting off my unfinished words. I pushed him away but couldn't break free, realizing how firm his feelings were. Aching, my Aching. What did I, Song Xiaoyu, deserve to meet you in this life and become your wife? Chu Qing's side story. My mother passed away when I was 6 years old. My father was devastated, fell ill, and was bedridden. When he recovered somewhat, he took me in to raise me personally. He treated me well, but I hated him. When my mother was alive, she was constantly being betrayed by his countless women, and some even targeted me. My mother spent her days trying to protect me, often melancholy and withdrawn. Though I couldn't fully understand the adult matters at that time, I distinctly remember one thing my mother told me. She said, "Chinger, if you make a promise to a girl, either don't make it, or if you do, you must keep it for a lifetime. Never break her heart." After my mother passed, I was left all alone, with no one to talk to. I had my father, but I wasn't very willing to engage with him. He had too many children, all older than me, and they had all bullied me. There was no one good in the palace. That is, until one day I met a dirty, silly little girl. I often liked to throw bird droppings into the East Palace or pests into the West Palace. To keep my identity hidden, I always wore a mask when I went out to cause mischief. But that day, I was careless. My mask slipped, and I didn't pay attention to the path, accidentally stepping into one of my own traps in the Imperial Garden, which caught my leg. Just as I was about to call for help, I suddenly saw a little girl with visible injuries, limping with a tear-streaked face, wandering around the garden. I was in pain, and her crying made me frustrated. I yelled at her, "Stop crying." She got startled, sobbed twice, and looked up. Seeing the bloodstains on my white robe, she immediately came over and held out her small hand. "Big brother, I have some medicine, you can use it." I took the jar and saw there wasn't much medicine left, but her walking was clearly affected by an injury. I frowned. "Where are you hurt? Let me see." She quickly covered her bottom. "It's much better. I'm going home today. This ointment was given to me by Uncle Emperor. It's very useful. I was going to save it for the next time I get hurt, but forget it, you can have it. You need it more than I do." The little girl was quite kind. I felt warmth in my heart. "Where's your home? How did you get hurt?" Her gaze immediately darkened. "My home is in the Prime Minister's mansion. My father hit me." "Your real father?" "Yes." "Why did he hit you?" "Just don't ask, big brother. I'm going home now. Take care of your injury, and be careful in the future. Getting hurt really hurts." She wiped her red eyes and waved at me before limping away. That night, for the first time, I Judong talked to my father and asked him about that little girl. He smiled broadly and rambled on and on. It turned out that she was the legitimate daughter of Prime Minister Song. Because she had offended the eldest princess, her father beat her as punishment, 20 big lashes. My father, unable to bear it, feared she might die from the beating, so he took her into the palace to treat her injuries. Looking back, the little girl was so obedient and sensible, she didn't seem the type to offend the princess. It must have been the princess bullying her. I snorted coldly. At dawn, I put on my mask and went to confront the eldest princess. I dragged her into a restroom and shoved her head into the chamber pot. Since then, the princess behaved extremely respectfully in front of me and didn't dare to utter a single word. In the following palace banquets, I saw that little girl named Song Wanxin again. She was completely different from before, lively and energetic, probably because her injuries had healed. I couldn't help but smile. Originally, I had planned to deal with her heartless father, but my father told me that her father adored her. I had even witnessed her sitting on her father's lap, acting coquettish at a banquet. Never mind, I would let him go this time. But the little girl didn't seem to have much luck. 2 years later, she was attacked by assassins and nearly lost her life. Upon hearing this, I immediately sent all the palace physicians to the Prime Minister's mansion. After days and nights of treatment, she finally survived. I could still hear her soft voice from a few years ago, caring for me. "Big brother, you must be careful. Getting hurt really hurts." I felt terrible, realizing I hadn't been able to help her. That's when I told my father I was done with my childish behavior. I would seriously train in martial arts, learn skills, and master archery. I would learn everything. My father was thrilled, thinking his unfilial son had finally become capable. He found me the best master. Every time I was exhausted and close to giving up, that little girl's tearful face and red eyes would appear in my mind, and I would find the strength to keep going. A man must have real skills. Only then can he protect the people he wants to protect, and that's what it means to be a man. But I definitely wouldn't be like my father. Years of training passed, and when I saw her again, She had grown into a young lady. On the autumn hunting grounds, she displayed a heroic presence and completely wiped out the arrogant eldest princess. I was so happy for her. However, a few days later, I found out that the eldest princess still hadn't learned her lesson. Unable to accept defeat, she beat the little girl until she couldn't get up. Damn it! I won't rest until I tear her apart. This time, I held nothing back. I lashed out at the princess just as she had to Song Wenxin. Afterward, I warned her if she ever bothered Song Wenxin again, I wouldn't let her go. This warning had to be said loudly to intimidate her, because I was about to go to the northern border to fight with my master. Although my father begged me not to go, I still decided to leave. When war breaks out, everyone has the responsibility to protect the country. I couldn't hide away just because I was the emperor's son. Besides, my mother had always told me that a man must have his ambitions, and in the face of great matters, he must never fear death. My mother had much more resolve than my cowardly father. She didn't live to see my success, but I had to make her proud in the afterlife. After 2 years of brutal war, I narrowly survived. I returned alive, having defeated the barbarians and forced them to kneel before my father, offering tribute and seeking peace. What made me even happier was that Song Wenxin was now of marriageable age. I intended to propose. Well, it's not that I particularly liked her. A man must stand tall, no matter how much I like her. I can't say it. It was just that there wasn't anyone more beautiful and spirited around me who could match my temper. Because I never pay attention to girls, except her. I thought about it. Over the years, we'd only exchanged nods at palace banquets. I probably looked fierce, and she probably didn't like me. If she refused me, well, I'd have my father intervene. Problem solved. But the moment I truly fell deeply in love with her was after we married. I realized this girl was quite interesting. When she first married me, she acted like a rabbit who had seen a wolf, trembling every day. Was it really necessary? I wouldn't hurt her. She's the fool who chose me. So what could I do? Spoil her, of course. I did my best to be kind to her, coming up with ways to make her happy, and gradually, she began to act more like a normal person, showing her emotions, happiness, anger, sorrow. And having her emotions fully on display fascinated me. I felt like I hit the jackpot. She was truly a treasure. But how beautiful and cute she was, I definitely wouldn't tell anyone. I'm just a person with a small heart. My wife is my treasure, and I don't want anyone else to like her. So, on the Mid-Autumn Festival banquet, when I saw her constantly glancing at that young man Su Yanxi's pretty face, I almost lost my mind. I gave her a warning, thinking that would settle things. But the next day, she was acting strange. She was smiling at me in a particularly fake way, and it made me feel uncomfortable. She wasn't concerned about me anymore. She didn't even remind me to wear my abdominal guard, something she would usually never forget. Could it be because of that pretty boy? Did she have a grudge with me because of him? But by evening, I realized something wasn't quite right. Usually, my little girl was shy, delicate, and cute. But that evening, she was incredibly bold, jumping onto me before I even had a chance to lie down. I felt something was wrong. This wasn't my little girl. But when I cupped her face and looked closely, it really was her. I slept uneasily that night. The next day, I suddenly decided to test her and take her to the autumn hunt. After all, a flying fish has a fiery temper, only recognizing one master. If someone had cast a spell on my little girl, I'd make sure to rip them apart. To my surprise, early that morning, she went to the firewood house and was whispering to the little servant who had returned with her the day before. I immediately sensed something was wrong. I wanted to question the servant, but he was trembling and couldn't even look at me. What was going on here that I didn't know about? I sent Swiss Xiao to investigate the Prime Minister's residence in secret. That evening, as we were heading to the hunting grounds, I was anxious. I feared that my little girl might really be gone. If that were the case, I would dig through the entire Prime Minister's residence to get her back. But when she threw herself into my arms, my heart finally calmed down. It was her, for sure. This was my little girl. Unable to hold back my longing and desire, I lost control on the hunting grounds. After the tenderness, we rode swiftly, but suddenly, the flying fish had a problem. In the moment when I saw her being thrown off the horse, I felt like fireworks exploded in my brain, like a thunder strike. I used all my strength to rush to her and managed to catch her just in time. Damn it, it hurt. I thought I might faint, but luckily, my little girl was safe in my arms and scathed. I wasn't afraid, even if I had to die. When I woke up, she wasn't beside me, and I immediately felt a panic. I was afraid she'd disappear again, just like she did that day. I ordered Zhuo to find her immediately. When I confirmed that the person beside me was indeed her, I could finally breathe easy and fall into a deep sleep. After a few days of rest, she seemed burdened with thoughts but wouldn't tell me anything. Until one day, Zhuo reported to me everything that had happened on the night I was injured. The more I thought about it, the more something didn't add up. So many things were illogical, but suddenly, everything made sense. Looking back, everything connected. I suddenly understood everything. The little girl who had stolen my heart with her crying face. Her name wasn't actually Song Wanqing. But after 2 years of marriage, I had called her ex-Iner for 2 years. How painful it must have been for her. It turned out, my little fish had suffered so much. I was furious with myself. I was angry that I couldn't protect her and let her endure so much pain. The only comfort was hearing from Zhuo that she had acted incredibly domineering that night. Her power and pride were unforgettable. I was so pleased. My delicate, soft-hearted little girl had finally grown up. I would spend the rest of my life protecting her, fulfilling her dream of becoming a happy little flying fish. That night, I couldn't wait to let her know that the only person I had ever liked was her. But then, my trusted servant suddenly told me that she had teamed up with the emperor to pick a concubine for me, because she couldn't have children. And Zhuo also told me that she had spent a lot of silver notes and secretly bought a fast horse. I was so angry, I almost laughed. So, just because she couldn't have children, she was going to leave me? Fine, just wait. I pretended not to know anything. I silently watched her play her part for the next few days. The only good thing was, since she knew she was about to separate from me, she stayed close to me every night. What a pleasure. And as she performed her act, I secretly gathered plenty of evidence of Song Yuan's evil deeds and presented it to the emperor. The emperor was furious, his beard shaking with rage. Though I didn't know exactly what he planned to do with him, I knew that the old bastard was done for. The emperor had his own tricks. Do you think I would let Song Wanqing get away with this foolishness? On the day I left the capital, I had everything arranged. Since she was spoiled and cruel-hearted, it would be best for the princess to deal with her. I called the princess to my residence to have her take care of it. Her future life? It would be quite interesting. But I didn't tell my silly little girl any of this. She had suffered too much in the first half of her life, and I only wanted her to live the second half of her life in joy and without worries. What does not having children matter? No children means fewer troubles. And I hate trouble. All my patience goes to my silly little girl, and I won't give any to anyone else. As for my father, he first wronged my mother, and now he forced my wife into a corner. I don't want to be his son anymore. He'll never have any influence over my life again. We'll each go our separate ways, and I wish him well. Once things settle, I'll build a huge fish pond in our village. My silly little fish and I. In the remaining years of our lives, clear waters and small fish. Clean and pure. Free and carefree. End of the story.